weather for an hour? Or,
no, yeah.
Or are we going to get down to business?
Long walk at Wasaga Beach in the weather.
This is what Aaron wants to discuss. Like, man, it was so hot.
True.
I was walking on the beach.
I got my notes. Okay, we got the weather talk is out, so we're good. We're rocking.
This is how we banter. This is how we banter. This is how we build a following, Aaron.
I get it. It's all about momentum.
I was on the beach, and then I was walking. It was hot out. This is my life right now. I'm Aaron.
Fuck you, man. Seriously.
I'm Aaron.
All right, well. So, Toma, I want to thank you very much for coming on. I know we had to rearrange a couple of dates, but at least we were able to lock it down. I really wanted to bring you on because you are the guy that revitalized my jiu-jitsu career, if you would call it that, because there was a point where I was like not training at all, and I was having to work across the street for like 5 years before I walked in the door. And I was like, all right, here, I want to train, let's get back to it. And I'm always really appreciative of that. So I want to thank you right now for that. But
basically what Aaron's trying to tell you is you saved his life.
I've been told that before. I don't know by that comment, Aaron, if you're trying to blow up my gym or what you're trying to do, but I think I'll take that as a compliment. But you're always a pleasure to have, man. It's been a while now, but it's funny. I was listening to Marco's podcast you guys did with him actually today while I was going for a run, and it's crazy when you look back and you think how old we all are, especially like him and I. We're both around in that 45 years old, and you've been around pretty long too. And I remember when you came to Evolution for the first time, and God, we've already been in the new place, 4 years? So
yeah, at least 4 or 5 now, I think.
Crazy, yeah. Time's flying.
No, it's been a ride, that's for sure. And then especially now that nobody's really training or everybody's like trying to get back into some form of normal, right? So like I know there's like underground roll sessions going on, but
we don't discuss that, Aaron. We don't
discuss it, but no, not at all. Tony
said too much. You
said
too much.
Tony about it. We're like, not happening. Don't worry. But no, like how things have been going with you so far. Like I know we've been chatting through the Zoom call once a week, which I think has been nice because it at least keeps people like connected to some extent if they haven't seen each other in a while.
I guess there's 2 answers to that, the personal and then I guess kind of the professional side of it. It's tough for me, man. Like, I mean, I still, thank God, I do have a day job as well. So that's been consistent, and it's probably been busier than ever through all of this because my company actually is a safety supply company. So we actually deal with all kinds of, COVID related or emergency preparedness stuff. But it's weird because I was always been work from home, and then I would travel a lot. So I'd be either, driving a far distance or on a plane going to meetings or conferences, whatever the case is. And then work stayed as busy, if not busier, but I'm literally in an office at home, 4 walls, and, the wife and kids are downstairs. And being somebody who I would self-diagnose myself as somewhat ADD, it's crazy. Like I've been starting to go squirrely, and I need to go for a run or get out and go for a bike ride just to get some sanity. But it's getting to that tipping point. I'm not going to lie. Like today before the podcast, actually, my kids' soccer started back today, and they're doing like only practices, and they're allowed 9 kids to 1 coach, and they have to follow all the rules. But it was nice just to take them there and be at the park and whatever, scrolling through my phone, watching him play soccer, whatever the case is. But some sort of normality again. And you can tell everybody's itching for it. But I guess that's kind of from a personal perspective. It's been really tough with the gym. I mean, I've been listening to all your guys' podcasts. You guys are doing a great job with that. And I hear all the different, friends of mine you've had on and colleagues and whatnot. And everyone's having a hard time with the gyms, right? It's, I haven't been as lucky as some of the guests that were on the podcast talking about, good property managers. We've been hit pretty hard with it. We didn't get any relief. So thank God we're in the new, for anyone who doesn't know, we used to be at about 10,000 square feet. And when we kind of went more boutique BJJ, thank God that was the case, because I can't imagine having that overhead right now. It'd be a totally different ball game. But everyone's itching to get back, and I feel like we're right on that cusp of somewhat understanding what that'll look like, or at least ideas floating around and whatnot. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, it seems, and I think we've probably got about another month till people really lose their minds. So hopefully we can beat that August 1st or mid-August date, hopefully in July, which is what I'm hearing. But feeling it, man. There's a mental health component to it too, just that happiness and not snapping as quickly. And I hope, it's not just me, it's people at the gym. We talk to on the Zoom calls, and, hopefully we can get everybody back to that kind of place that makes them happy. It's a stress releaser, and, we keep our bodies and our brains stimulated that way. Right. So it's tough, but, I echo a lot of the comments people have been answering that question to you guys on the podcast. It's unique, and, they use that phrase unprecedented, and that's exactly what it is. But we're figuring it out, and I hope there's some sort of, I don't even know what the word is, but somewhat, getting back to normal like it was before this, and not, actually living a different normal, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? Nobody knows what that's going to look like, but things aren't going to be the same. But you start to wonder, is it just they're not going to be the same for a while? Is it a year? Will it ever go back? There's that whole unknown, right? So, I'm curious and anxious at the same time.
I was going to ask you, so you were located with Evolution BJJ. Now you're located inside Element CrossFit. Just from a business standpoint, are you subleasing from them, and are they having issues with their landlord and tenant and all that? And that's a big mess going on.
You're spot on. So when we separated from Evolution way back and just went strictly BJJ, Element started subleasing for us. So Alex, who's the Element owner, he's a fantastic guy. He is incredible. He's done so much for him, and God bless him. He's a great, I'll call him a landlord, a direct landlord, but his landlord it's a big commercial name, and they just don't want to take the time. That area where we're at, I think it's a 3% vacancy rate within industrial buildings. So like trying to get a spot, even if you wanted to, especially in our business, it's next to impossible if you want to stay within that local area. But he's been awesome, but his landlord hasn't been the greatest, to be honest.
Gotcha. So it's just like touch and go, but you guys we've been able to stay afloat, and we have plans for the future, which is good. I mean, the biggest thing is, I think, especially when you move from that big location, and then it was going up strictly more for you guys only.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I wanted. Like, I love Crew Gerald. Him and I, always got along, and my roots 21 years ago started in his gym, and we had a great 5 years together, and he, brought me in as a business partner, and we get along really well today. But I just felt like we were at a point and growing big enough where we needed to just be able to focus, have four walls around us. I love all martial arts, but martial arts are conducted differently, right? Some's with loud music and banging bags, which is great. I love, I come from Muay Thai roots too, but when you want to be in a very intimate kind of BJJ mindset setting, learning and trying to absorb and then apply, it's different. So, we're very cordial, and I think it was a great move for both of us. And, coming into this space, it's what Dave and I always talked about. We wanted something boutique. And then, we're not in a huge space, but our numbers are big for considering the mass space we have. And I like it, right? You're always kind of it's that double-edged sword. Do you want to go bigger and then, expand and then take on all of that, added work and whatnot, or you just kind of want to keep it intimate and have that kind of culture that you're really striving for? So it's a little bit of a push-pull, but really happy with where we are and how things are going for sure.
Yeah, especially when you get to those bigger locations, you kind of lose that element of like keeping that atmosphere, right? Where everybody's kind of in the same groove. And if it spreads out too far, then you just don't get that same type of element. Sometimes I believe.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Aaron, Mike, well too, like we're, especially Dave and I, were BJJ is kind of our love, our passion. And even though we do train people for MMA and they come and do camps with us and whatnot, it's jiu-jitsu specific. And that's what we wanted to do, right? We wanted to take people, it's kind of like a yoga studio that you're there to do yoga, right? And nothing against gyms who cross train and whatnot. It's just, we decided that's what we want to do, have kind of a bit of a boutique feel to it. And yeah, I think that created the culture that we have there today, and people are happy with that. So, all the power to everybody who wants kind of that mix. But I really love the fact that I know everybody's coming there that day to train BJJ. And even though you never really do it, you see your student over, doing the boxing class. You're like, hey, how come you're not in my class, right? So it's always been a little bit of a push-pull, but it's what we wanted to do, and we're super happy with what's going on right now.
Yeah, no, I love that atmosphere. It's great. So especially kind of like you were saying, like your roots were originally Muay Thai. So how did you even get your toe dipped into the BJJ circuit? Was it just kind of like you saw it? It was one of those things, because I know your roots are connected with mine, especially when it came from the Schilling and the Franco Bearing and all that kind of stuff. So, but I don't know the whole story. So
there goes Aaron dipping, talking about Wasaga Beach once again, just rubbing it in our face,
dipping that toe in, yeah,
dipping a toe in. We're just walks on the beach. But yeah, so we want to know your origin. How'd you get started into martial arts?
Yeah, it's I'm kind of proud of the story. I kind of stumbled upon it, to be quite honest. So I was working in the late 90s. I was working in Etobicoke, living in Oakville, and I was working midnight shift. And a bunch of us at work wanted to do martial arts in the morning after work. So actually, I'll backpedal a little bit. When I was just after high school, I got into some bad eating habits, bad lifestyle, going to the pool hall, drinking dozens of beers. And at one point I ended up almost 270 pounds. So I quit smoking. I was always an athlete kind of growing up. And then I got into a bit of a rut for a couple of years, smoking cigarettes, eating bad lifestyle. So it was a New Year's resolution, 97 going on 98. And I said, that's it. I'm just going to, I'm going to get clean. I'm going to get in shape. So I lost basically 100 pounds in a year. I went to the gym every morning after work, went for a jog before I went to bed because I was working the night shift. And then I did the weight loss. And then that's when I wanted more, right? I was like, okay, this is great, but I want something more. And to be honest, I always, even though I played football, I played high level hockey, I was always competitive, but I always had a fear of confronting somebody. If there was a situation, even though I was, usually in good shape or a bigger guy, I didn't like it. There was that flight versus fight. And, I always wanted to do the flight. Even if I didn't do it, that was my natural instinct, right? So nature versus nurture. And then, so I said, you know what, I'm in shape now. I want to take it to the next level. I want to learn. I was in my 20s then. And I was like, you know what, I want to be Steven Seagal. I want to be able to go to a bar and haul some ass, right? Was the mindset, right? But, so that's when I started after work. So it was the original MAFA. It was at the Dunwin buildings at Dixie and Dundas pretty much. So I talked to Gerald at the time, or one of his instructors, and he said, hey, if you can get enough people, I'll open the gym in the morning and do a class. It'll be to make it worthwhile. So I got 12, 15 people together at work. We committed to it and we started training Muay Thai. So I got into it. I loved it. We were training every day, and then I started coming in the evenings before I went to work, and then I started competing in it, and that's when I first met Crew Gerald. So I remember one day we were doing a class, and in walks in Slavko Ilic and Mark Bocek. So Mark Bocek he just came back from California. He was training with Hickson down there, and Hickson's, rest in peace, Hopson Gracie, his son who passed away, they were training together. And Slavko was really good friends with Hickson as well. And they came into our gym to do a demo. So it was all carpets in the gym, and there was a boxing ring. So I remember seeing Mark Bocek, and, God, he was a teenager at the time, maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. I thought, if I saw this kid in a bar, I'd just crush him, right? And that kid messed me up. And I stay connected with Mark after, and we've talked about it before, but he put me in pretzel after pretzel after pretzel, and I couldn't do anything. And theoretically, I should have been able to destroy him, right? But I didn't know what jiu-jitsu was. Nobody really did. It was 1999, right? So from that day, I was hooked. Slavko ended up starting to teach out of Maffa with Gerald. And then I started with him under Hicks and Gracie. And then I ended up had a cool journey with him. I mean, Slavko, he was, a little AWOL once in a while. He'd come and go, but, me and the students kept on training. And I actually had the opportunity to go down with Slavko and go to Hickson's house and do privates in his garage and go train with Hopson and all of that, which was, one of the greatest, in my opinion, stories I've ever had or opportunities I've ever had. And then he kind of went missing. So I was a Hickson at the time. I'm assuming he still has the same belt system where you're a white belt, a blue stripe, a blue belt, a purple stripe, a purple belt. So there was only the one upcoming stripe to your belt. So I was a blue stripe under Hickson. And then Slavko went AWOL. He's gone. So me and a couple of the hardcore students who were really like hooked on it, we were training at Premier Fitness. And then after a while, I knew he wasn't coming back, and that's where I found Scott Schilling. So started training with Scott, and Scott was under Silvio at the time. So I got my blue belt, purple belt, and brown belt under Silvio and Scott together. And then that's kind of where Scott and Silvio had their falling out. And that's where our synergies are, Aaron, with, Marco and I we were teammates, and Monkey, and, we'd go to just off Yonge Street there and go train in the dungeon, and Silvio would come. It was awesome. It was such a cool time. It was legendary, really, like so many incredible pioneers of the sport. And now they're all telling their story like I'm telling mine. But, yeah, then Scott and Silvio split when I was a brown belt, and I stayed with Scott. Silvio was in Brazil. Scott was still local. Scott and I had a great relationship at the time, and I was his senior student. So I ended up staying there, and I got my black belt from Scott in the beginning of 2011. The end of 2010. And about a year and a bit after that, him and I had a bit of a fallout, some business conflict of interests. And that's when I found Hobson Mora. And now I've been with Hobson for, 9 years now. Greatest thing I ever did, in my opinion, and in terms of, really defining where I want to go, what association I want to be with. And, you went with us last year, Aaron, down in Tampa. We have a camp there every year with a camp in Canada. So, yeah, that's kind of my story, about 21 years worth of, going through it. But it was really different because, when I was from white belt to brown belt, you could train 3 classes a week. That's what there was. And when I started training jiu-jitsu, there was the oddball, black belt somewhere, but, blue belt was pretty much the highest average instruction in Canada. There was like Scott and Bocek and Omar and, Marco and Shaw, and then there was Jeff Jocelyn, kind of that generation. And then I was kind of right behind them, one belt. And it's funny because, you talk about all these killers on the mats and competition training and whatnot. Like, you're growing like this, and these guys are just catching you because there's 3, 4, 5 black belts on a mat and 7 days a week, multiple classes a day at your disposal. It was a different time. It was very different, a lot more traditional. Obviously coming from the bearing system for so many years, I was very self-defense focused. And we still are today. And that's a big thing in our club. And that's how people come in. That's what they're introduced to. The kids program is very heavy in that. But yeah, it's been an evolution, no pun intended, but, it's been awesome to watch this community grow, and having all these great people on podcasts and seeing great people do great things for the sport and the community. It's absolutely awesome, especially, being in my mid 40s now and watching all the younger generation have this opportunity. It's pretty cool.
Okay. So you, so you left Silvio Bearing, Scott Schilling. You're going through, you're researching all the names of like all these world champions. So I guess why Hopson Mora? What drew you to that one name?
So two things. A year prior to affiliating, I went to Dom from Grants or in Scarborough there. He's been under Hobson for a while. So he had a seminar the year before I actually affiliated, and I went to the seminar. So Scott, Sam, and I went to the seminar just kind of as guests. So I knew of Hobson, like obviously a legend, between him and Shaolin and probably Gustavo Dantas, Leo Vieira kind of created that whole Novanyao brand or really grew it. And went to his seminar, we clicked, and then I ended up pursuing him after when I decided I wanted to reaffiliate with somebody. And I loved his jiu-jitsu. I loved his personality. He has a manager, Doug Kimball, who at the time and still kind of quasi was Hobson's manager for the affiliation. And I loved that when I talked to Doug, it wasn't a, hey, pay your dues and come join. It was a, hey, are you a fit for the brand that we believe in and the relationship that we want to have with any school that's an affiliate, right? It was quality versus quantity, right? And I loved Hobson. I loved his jiu-jitsu. I loved that Dom was there. We kind of had a Canadian counterpart. And then I still wasn't accepted right away. Hobson, the following year when he came up for Dom's seminar, he said, listen, let's do a private before the seminar. And that was kind of my interview process. He was like, I remember you, I like you, but I want to spend another hour with you. I want to test your jiu-jitsu. You're already a black belt going in an association. That's a big thing to accept somebody to put your brand on that person. And, if they're not worthy of it, then, that's your brand that you're jeopardizing there. Right. So, so then we did a private for an hour and we rolled and he messed me up, but we had some really good rolls. And then we talked after and he was like, in that Portuguese accent, I really like your jiu-jitsu. I like your foundation. You're a nice guy. I'd love for you to join the organization. And that's kind of when we put the stamp on it.
Nice. So what year was that? When did that happen?
So that would have been 2011.
Okay.
2011, yeah.
And that's kind of like when you guys moved into the Evolution place across the street?
So, yeah, that was right around then. So I started teaching. So the story gets even more complex. When I was a brown belt, 4 stripes, I ended up changing careers. And to do the career change that I wanted to do, I needed to kind of take a step back financially to get some experience to start moving up the ladder, right? So when that happened, my wife was pregnant. She was about to go on mat leave, and I took a substantial financial cut going to this new company to pursue this new career. So I knew Gerald had opened up a Muay Thai gym there on Ridgeway, close to where we are now, Aaron, just a little bit south. And then so I connected with him. I went there and, we were always friends from MAFA back in 99. And I knew he didn't have a program. I know Rory McDonald was teaching some no-gi there at the time. But I went to Gerald and I said, hey, G, I'd love to start, teaching gi Brazilian jiu-jitsu here. And then he was like, I can't really afford to pay you right now, this and that. So I said, listen, so, let me start teaching. Let me build up the class sizes. Once we get to X amount of new students, then pay me this dollar amount. And once we get to the next level, and it was a sliding scale, right? So there was no risk for him. And the onus was on me to build up clientele basically for him. So just started snowballing. I was still a brown belt, ended up getting my black belt. And then when we went into the next evolution, which was the big spot across from Lifetime there, that's when Gerald kind of had a falling out with his ex-girlfriend and he wanted me to become a partner in the business. So that's when that whole thing kind of started. And then it just never ended. We kept growing and growing and growing.
Awesome. So how many years have we been doing camps with Hobson now? So it's been like at least 6, 7 now, or is it less than that?
The Canadian or the Tampa?
The Canadian one, sorry. Because they've been doing the Tampa one for 8 years.
Yeah, this year would have been our 7th, but it obviously didn't happen because of COVID. Yeah. So we're always 1 year back.
So you guys going this year, or? Oh wait, sorry.
You know what? If it's happening, I'm going, but it's a little bit scary because he's in Florida, and Florida is like the epicenter right now in the U.S. for that second wave. But probably not, Mike. To be honest, like if you're gonna be real, it's probably not happening. But you never know with the Americans, right? They're pretty hardcore.
Yeah, no, it'd be awesome to go, but I saw the numbers today and they jumped up to 10K for one day. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, that's a tough one to explain to the wife for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm going to set this one out.
You'd have to quarantine for like 14 days anyways when you come back.
Yeah,
so it's like,
true enough.
That's the issue traveling anywhere right now, because we had a Janine on our previous podcast and she was talking about taking a super fight in California. But she went to California, she left for a week, did a fight there, and then came back. She'd have to isolate for 14 days, and then she can't work. And it's basically you go on vacation for a week, but then you have to take another 2 weeks off on top of the week that you're trying to get away for. So
yeah, you rip through your year's vacation for one super fight, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so going to the Hobson Camp, I'll be honest, in Florida was awesome because it was like really wide, eye-opening of like how many actual affiliates drive down to that one epic center, which is pretty amazing, like how many they have. But how many affiliates do we have in Canada? Only 3 or?
3 affiliates in Canada. So Sandro, Dom, and myself. And Dave, obviously. And then I believe, don't quote me, I think there's 53 globally, something in that ballpark. But yeah, you saw it firsthand, Aaron. It's pretty crazy. Like, I've been every year. I missed the first one because I wasn't an affiliate that year, and I've been to everyone after, and I've had the privilege of teaching at many of them. But it's crazy. Like, you've got guys like Shaolin was teaching 1 year there. Gustavo Dantas was there. Bruno Bastos was there. Ricardo Dementia Brew from the UFC was there. Like, all of these, and those are like big names, never mind like the dozens and dozens of black belts from around the world that are teaching or just they're training or supporting or whatnot. So it's pretty cool. You're in a room of about 200 people, probably 30 black belts. And it's just information, rolling, take as much as you want, sit out as much as you want, no obligation. It's yours to take in however you want. But it's something, man. It's really, and again, you were there last year and you can attest to it. But, you can go there. If you want to go there and prepare for the Worlds, that's usually just after. You couldn't be at a better spot just to get your conditioning up and pick as many brains as you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing training there. I had such a blast. Like, the weather was great. Like, I could see why Florida and like that type of atmosphere is a great spot to go train jiu-jitsu, go to the beach if you can, all that kind of stuff. Like, just get that vibe is awesome.
Yeah, you get it all. You get your jits in, you get that vacation kind of sense in. You can go early, you can stay late. Like, you can make of it what you want, but it's yeah, I agree. It all, the stars align in terms of logistics, and it's a super fun time. You get a good bunch of guys like we had last year, and you have some drinks at night, you have some laughs, and it's a good time.
Mm-hmm. But you want to stay away from the pork dish for whatever Matt had. Because oh my god! So Mike, I gotta tell you this. So we go to, was it a Thai restaurant? That was.
Well, you're gonna have to tell me. I'm not a part of the Hopson Mora affiliation. So
no, I'm gonna tell you.
You have to give me some insider information on what happened.
Dude, we thought the guy was dead. We thought he was dead. we sent maids to his room to check on him because we thought he might have died. Go ahead, Aaron.
So this is the Saturday? No, this is the Friday training day. So there's a Thai restaurant. So everybody's going to get lunch and all that kind of stuff. So we're like, okay, we'll go get Thai food and all that jazz. Everybody at the table gets pad Thai, right? Just to keep it simple, nice and easy meal. You can't mess up pad thai. Matt gets some like pork or beef pate meal or something. I don't even know what he got. And it looked weird. It smelled weird. I don't even think he ate even half of it, right? So we're like, okay, everybody goes back to training, the whole thing. Saturday morning happens. Matt's like, I'm not coming. He said, so I call you because we're going to like, okay, we're getting in the car. We have to call the car down. He's like, Matt said, go without him. He's going to meet us there. He's going to take an Uber. We're like, okay, no problem. So we go, but we don't hear anything through Matt through the entire text message. Like texting him, he's not picking up our texts because you can see it on Facebook if they read your message or whatever. So we're like, did this guy die? So it's like,
you gotta put in perspective. Like the morning goes by, he said he's gonna take an Uber, doesn't come. So, you know, we trained probably about 4 hours now. We're at lunch. I'm texting. The other Matt's texting. Aaron's texting. We're like, he's not even looking. Like, okay, maybe he fell asleep because he said he wasn't feeling well. Now we're at the end of the day. It's like 5 o'clock. We're like getting a bite afterwards. Like, this guy's like, then we're calling the hotel. Like, can you go into this room and see if this guy's like alive? Like, we were genuinely scared. It was terrible. But never, to say the least, he had the Floridian diet. Let's call it that, where he was really cleansing.
So he is alive though, right? So we can.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's just make sure, because then we just look like dicks. It's like, oh, by the way, we found him. We found him in the hotel room.
But the training was really good, so that's all that matters.
The training was amazing. Oh, but we brought back a body. But
yes.
No. It was kind of scary though, because it's like there's no response. But then it was like, we were also just like, is he mad at us? Like, because we left without him or whatever.
Did we hurt his feelings? Is he hurt? Did Aaron say something stupid about the beach again? I don't know. What's going on?
Dipping toes.
Dipping toes in the water.
So I wanted to ask you, because you talked about like you changed careers and all that kind of, is that the modeling career that you were doing?
Oh, God.
Or was this something?
You had to go there, eh? You had to go there.
You were a model?
You had to go there.
You were actually a legit model.
So
he was a legit
I don't know if this was a good move, Aaron, considering like your 4th degree brown belt. This might have extended your brown belt for a year, this question. But yeah, so I got ridiculed on the mats for that for years. I did that for years as well on the side, and did some traveling with it and whatnot. So I'm not going to get too in-depth about it, but it was a thing. And it's funny because when I was doing that, the people I was with couldn't believe that I grappled. And when I was grappling, the people I was grappling with couldn't believe I did that. So it was kind of living 2 different lives, and they didn't really coincide with each other, but it was a thing, yeah.
Were you modeling in Europe, and were you the next Derek Zoolander?
I did go for a bit, and no, I was not the next Derek. I was a little bit above him, but no, I'm just kidding. No, it was mostly Toronto-based. I did go to Italy for a bit, but whatever. I was making some extra money. The money's really good when you're working, and I figured why not.
Now we have a video podcast for two people are hosting it that Faces for Radio. Can you give us a quick blue steel?
You know what? When Aaron's editing, I'm sure he'll catch a clip and he'll do a little bit of Photoshop.
I'll find one and I'll just pop it in there.
How about a La Tigra?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, there, you're doing it. You're doing it. That's perfect.
No,
Aaron does a good one though. He did one in Tampa.
No, I didn't.
yeah, we did. Let's see it right now.
No. So, because I know you have one of those Louis Vuitton bags. So, do you wear that better, or does Gordon Ryan wear his better?
He does have the same one. Hey, man, listen, like, I've lived with this for 21 years in this community, man. It's a stigma. You can dress well and grapple at the same time. There's nothing wrong with it, man.
Aaron, listen, it's not a purse. It's European, okay?
It's a man bag.
It's not a purse. It's European. It's a European carry-all.
You could say that for anything, Mike. You just call it European, you get away with anything.
Aaron's hairline, it's European.
Oh, God. I think that's like Scandinavian.
Whoa, now you're insulting my people. I'm a quarter Scandinavian. I'm appalled.
Yeah, I knew you couldn't be a full-bred. You're too dark.
I'm too dark. It's like, oh my God.
We don't need Mike.
Turn down the brightness on that. Jeez.
Well, like, yeah, I don't tan anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's just bad.
Shocking.
Duh. I mean, all that time you spent with Saga Beach, you would think you would come back at least a little red.
No, nothing. I mean, I stayed in the shade. I was good.
Do you just turn into a lobster within 30 seconds of stepping into the sun?
I would, yeah, probably. If I didn't put suntan, like 60 kids suntan lotion on.
Or do you use the baby oil?
I don't use the baby oil. I'll die.
I'll tell you right now, my son, pound for pound, probably the best tan I've ever seen.
Oh, is he?
It's the Scandinavian.
It's a Scandinavian, yeah. It's all the sunlight that they get like 8 weeks of the year there, you know?
Yeah. It's like carbs. Your body just absorbs it.
The Jimmy shoes, that was Matt, though. You don't have the Jimmy shoes.
That was Matt. Matt was ripping, like kind of like you guys are on something I was wearing. And I looked down, and of course I know the brand, but he's wearing Jimmy Choos, and they're not Jimmy shoes, Aaron. They're Jimmy Choos.
Choos?
Choos.
Is that the knockoff variation of it?
It's Aaron's version. But anyways, these runners probably, I know my wife loves Jimmy Choo high heels. So and it's known that those things are about $1,000 a pair. So I know that Matt's Jimmy Choo's men's runners are probably about $800, and he was ripping on me about how much I spent on something. I look at his shoes, I'm like, shut up. Like, you have no right to speak right now.
Oh man, that was a good trip.
Listen, no matter what Aaron says, you can wear whatever European carry-all you want, okay? Don't let that man get to you.
No, man, Speedos are cool.
So another thing, because we talked about as far as like you were like highly involved with, again, you were more self-defense, and then obviously kind of more moving into the Hopson series is more of like the style that Hobson's playing and going from there. Like, where do you kind of see the sport moving now, especially where it's been more sport related compared to self-defense?
Well, it is a segregation, definitely, right? Like you have two worlds, and then I think some people live in one or the other, and some people blend them. And it's the world of kind of like the Hickson-esque, Matt Thornton, heavy self-defense. It's about no time limits and sub only and surviving, the streets of Rio de Janeiro, kind of how it was originally intended. And then you've got the, perfect example, in my opinion, is like the Meow Brothers, Keenan with his lapel guards and worm guards and, the Berimbolo. So very sport oriented. You'd use it in the street, in my opinion. You're going to get your teeth smashed out. So, there's a blend of it. And I think, I mentioned the evolution of the sport before, and that's exactly what it's been, right? And a lot of people lean to one side and they get mad at the other, but in my opinion, it's a beautiful thing that it's evolving, and people can decide what they want to do with it, right? Like now there's sport jiu-jitsu, and then there's self-defense kind of MMA style jiu-jitsu. And depending what you want to get out of it, go do it. And if you want a bit of both, find a gym that does both. And if you want a gym that's more heavy sport, and then like Marco was talking about it too, like if you want to get into the sport, get into the competition class, and if you want to do the self-defense aspect of it, do the leisurely class. So I think having self-defense as a foundation when you're talking about being well-rounded in the roots of jiu-jitsu, what it's originally intended for, what it's still intended for, and then also branching off into the sport. I'm a believer that one helps the other and vice versa. And It's an offer, man. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you're offering a service, you're offering an education, really, and it depends who your demographic is. If they are somebody, if you're heavy into the self-defense and that's what they want, they're going to come to you. If you're heavy into the sport and that's what they want, they're going to come to you. And if you're a hybrid or your curriculum kind of entails both, you know, be it maybe on the self-defense on the front end of it and sport on the back end of it, there's a market for everything, right? So look at how many different karates there are, and look at how many different, you know, styles of martial arts there are in general. It depends what you want. I'm a big believer in self-defense because I told you guys I got into martial arts because I always had that initial gut instinct of flight, right? I didn't want altercation, and I didn't like that. And I wanted to overcome that. And I think ultimately when Mark Bocek turned me into a pretzel, to me, that proved the effectiveness of it. If I wanted to take striking at him, I couldn't do it, right? And so that was my desire. And then as I, you know, fell in love with the art and the sport, I wanted to also get better at the sport aspect of it, right? I was from white to purple. I competed like heavy all the time. And I loved it because I wanted to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable. And, you know, I think I told you, Aaron, I don't know how many tournaments I've been in. I've never started the day without having that crazy anxiety, wanting to almost puke, you know, run in the washroom before your first match. And then everything settles in. You kind of black out and you go do your thing. But, yeah, to answer the question, it's to each their own, right? I think there's places for all of it within jiu-jitsu, and it's what you want to get out of it. And I don't think that anybody should dictate what you want to do. I think if, you know, you go to the grocery store and you want pasta, you know, somebody shouldn't be telling you should get potatoes instead, right? It's what you want.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think at the end of the day, I think you and Marco Costa nailed it. I think it's, you know, self-defense is a very important part of it as well, but to each their own. I think if there's certain things that you want to learn and you want to pursue, like nobody should be telling you, hey, like you have to do this and this only, like you have to play lapel guard or you have to learn self-defense. Like it should be your journey. But I think also at the end of the day, like you want to root everything back into the fundamentals. It's like, why are we training jiu-jitsu to begin with? Like, you know, and the main reason is to defend yourself.
Yeah, like you said a key word there, right? Fundamentals. And in our club, we have fundamentals class. And fundamentals, I get probably more colored belts than I do white belts. It's not about beginners or intermediate or advanced. It's about, hey, you know, Aaron, you're a brown belt, but you've done 10,000 techniques since you've really, you know, done proper bridge and roll review. Like you're going to go there and get the fundamentals back of it, right? But fundamentals on the other side for me is our kids program. And I believe, and we believe at our club that kids, when they come in, and especially that like 6-7-year-old age, the foundation of their learning should be the fundamentals. And fundamentals to me are self-defense, base, and then, you know, the basics in terms of a bridge and roll, the basics in terms of being able to keep a mount, the basics in terms of being able to escape a mount, just those, you know, the major 4 or 5 positions, being good on the top and being good on the bottom. And then from there, that's when the kids start deciding, you know, back to the last conversation we had, is now, do I want to go compete, or do I just want to not go to school and get bullied? And then that's when they start understanding their personalities and what they want to get out of it and where they want to go with it. And then that's when you start kind of crafting that journey for them.
I think especially like, which is awesome because you have yourself and Dave who teach very differently, but you guys work very well together. My just from my experience with you guys, because like your style is a little heavier, right? Whereas we're
you talking about my weight or my style?
No, I'm not saying.
I think you're talking about his weight, and yeah, I think you just got your black belt pushed back another year. Way to go,
yeah. It's like it's just different. It's just a different style, right? Whereas Dave's style is completely different. And you guys mesh those two styles very well together, especially as the group has been taught like 2 different ways, I think. because you got guys that roll completely different from each other. Nobody rolls exactly the same.
Yeah, so what I'd say about Dave and I is we're a lot like that conversation of sport versus self-defense, right? Like, the guy's an encyclopedia. Like, he studies all day long and then pressure tests it and then applies it and then teaches it. Like, you know, we're two different personalities. We're two different styles. But I think what we understand and we realize is, A, we respect each other. He's my first black belt. But B, we now have that full offering, right? So when you talk about sport and you talk about self-defense and everything in between, you can come into our club and pick, you'll know by what night of the week you're coming in, what you're going to be heavier on. Is it going to be more of a, you know, Dave is incredible. If you roll with him, his pressure for a 150 pounder it's unreal. And it's all like a lot of the Hickson concepts. You know, around base and angles and the connection and that. And then, you know, I love self-defense, but I love sport jiu-jitsu. That's my passion. I get, like, I'm in my happy place when I get to pull out a lapel and put my foot in there and, you know, play the game. And, you know, I think people get that feel from both of us in different ways, and that kind of makes them more well-rounded. And then, you know, from an academy perspective, I think that our offering then becomes bigger and more broader, which is, you know, appealing to somebody who's coming in and paying for a service, to be, you know, quite frank.
I think it's important to have, you know, different instructors that have different takes on everything. And I think that's what you guys have. I think that's probably why you and Dave work together so well.
Yeah. And, you know, we have Adam teaching as well. I have Aaron teaching a lot, and it's, you know, Aaron and I have so many similarities probably in our rolling style, but then crazy differences too, right? And then there's so many synergies between probably 5-6 regular instructors in the gym, but everybody learns from one another, and, you know, and then the gym grows faster, right? So if they find that one little tidbit of that foundational instruction that night and add it to that sport curriculum that was taught the next night, and you know how to, you know, take that, incorporate it and make it your own. I mean, to me, it's not about you becoming, I'm not going to ever be Hobson. The guy, the way he moves is like nobody else. Like, you know, between him and like a Bruno Malfacini and people that size, I call them little squirrels, right? Like they go into lines that I would never think of. And, you know, like I don't invert. Like, I'll do it once in a while just to like shock Aaron or something, but like that's not my game. So I don't necessarily, you know, for me, it's not about being affiliated to someone or having someone as an instructor, either me or my professor, and becoming them. It's about taking bits and pieces from everybody and making your own, right? Like, I learn from white belts, blue belts, purple belts, brown belts every day in the academy, and I steal things that they might not even be knowing. And if something frustrates me, you know, I'll probably, because I can, I've been down the journey long enough, I'll take that, I'll reverse engineer it, and then I'll incorporate it into my game, right? If I'm having trouble with it, I'm going to start using it, and by using it, I'm going to figure out how to defend it better as well.
Yeah, like when we were at actually every time we do a Hobson Camp, I watch him do something, I'm like, yeah, my body doesn't move like that. I'm going to have to wait till the next technique to see if I can do that one.
Yeah, like, it's true. But what I get out of it all the time is like, I'll think like, okay, my leg probably can't do that, but that grip is allowing him to do that. Mm-hmm. So that grip is going to be beneficial maybe for me to apply it with my game, right? Or I'll take, you know, often Hobson always teaches in sequences, right? So he'll start in a position, then he will evolve it. And then let's say he's in a closed guard, he'll teach you how to open the guard and be into a grip control. And then after you go and drill, you come back, and then from that grip control, he's going to teach a sweep from there that flows out of that position. And then after you go and drill that, then the sweep leads into like an arm bar or a choke, right? And that's what the beauty of it to me is, if I could take 1/8 of everything that just happened in the last hour and apply it to my game, it was worth the time invested.
Excellent. So obviously things are like touch and go right now, especially with reopening, all that jazz. But what are some of the goals or, like, you know, the growth of Evo that you kind of have set for yourself, or whether it's with Hopson, where for Canada, like, have you given any thought to that once we get out of this?
I mean, I'd like to get back to where we were. I mean, we were in a really, really good place. It's not just financially. I mean, like, from stability, being established, right? Like having a spot that fits us right now. And, you know, I've learned a lot of things being in business the last 10 years, the do's and the don'ts. And I've learned that, you know, you need to get to a certain point before you seek the next kind of the level or scale, the scalability of it. So I like to get back to where we were. We were in a really great, comfortable position. We were in a position where our students had the bodies to roll with. We had high-level competitors. We had tons of older, tons of younger. You know, we have what you guys were talking about on your last podcast, you know, those purple belts that are giving the 45-year-olds a hard time because they're training every day of the week, which is, as instructors and owners, what you want to see, right? Like, you know, I've got hip injuries, shoulder injuries, and I'm, you know, not in the shape I used to be in, and a lot of it's due to those injuries. And whatever the case is, that's great, man, because when you can get to that point where, you know, the business is good from a financial perspective where you don't have to worry about that, that's when you can start incorporating the things that make it more intimate, right? And, you know, if it's something from, you know, rash guards or new mats or getting into a bigger space or adding classes, whatever it is, it's all incremental growth. And, you know, long-winded answer, I want to get back to where we were. Because where we were was in a phase where we were growing and are growing, and I just want to continue to do that without overexerting or overextending ourselves and making sure that, you know, we're always mitigating risk, but giving the best quality that we can on the mats and making sure there's a variety of teachers, good quality instruction. And, you know, I'm just like Danny was, you know, I was listening to Danny on the podcast and Marco and my student Matt, and very similar personalities, right? And you guys get along with very similar personalities. Like, I don't have any enemies in the community, right? It's all about the betterment of growing the sport and spreading it. And, you know, I see anybody you had on your podcast or probably you're going to have, I know them and we've crossed paths at some point, and 99% of the time in a good way. And, you know, we're all about being ambassadors of the sport. And to me, that's the goal, is just to make sure that as we grow, we don't grow saturating anything or diluting anything in terms of quality or culture, especially culture. That to me is so important. And, you know, the biggest compliment I could have, and one thing I'll boast about, is, you know, I've had people like yourself, Aaron, you know, have life changes and come in the gym and they're, you know, experienced, and I know they've been in different gyms. Either, you know, they're traveling and they're visiting a place, or they've moved and they've been somewhere else. And Mike, you've come and trained with us as well. And it's like the biggest compliment I get on a regular basis is, man, your guys are awesome. Everybody's, and girls, I should say, everyone's so welcoming, right? It's, you come in there, you're not getting thrown into the lion's den. It's a humble place, and, you know, your ego gets checked at the door. And if you do have one, you'll organically get filtered out very quickly, and, you know, not through a mean way, but just through natural progression. And, you know, to me, that's the most important thing, to keep growing as much as we want to, but also never saturating or diluting the culture, quality, or offering that we have.
Very nice. We took some subscriber questions, all 10 subscribers that we have. And one of the most popular questions, number one with a bullet, nothing came close to this. And the people want to know, when is Aaron Gall getting his 5th stripe on his brown belt?
Fuck you.
I could give him a 5th stripe right now, actually.
Can we post that online as well?
You know what? We'll when the day comes, we'll do it live on a podcast, or we'll air it on the podcast. But what I will say is, Aaron's done his time as a brown belt for sure. You know, not to inflate his head, but an ideal student, man. Like, I mean, always willing to help. You know, he does come in late a lot, but I call it fashionably late. I think he wants everyone to see how he tapes his fingers. Really weird, but
I got kids I'm putting to sleep.
Aaron tapes his fingers, and it usually takes about 4 or 5 rounds for that to complete. And then when everybody's tired, then he jumps in and rolls.
Yeah,
does he do that? Does he do that?
At my place, it's more like he takes enough time for the warm up to pass, and then he ends up being done somehow when I say, okay, take a water break. But no, great student, man. Like, pleasure having Aaron. Jokes aside, and big things are coming soon for Aaron, and he's deserved all of it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
He definitely has. Aaron's worked hard, and all kidding aside, when he does show up for a 12 o'clock class at Lifetime at 1:30, he does work hard.
Hey, when you're the manager, that's what happens.
That's what I'm saying. I'm on that. I'm on that. CEO.
I'm looking at my time right here. I'm looking. It's. I think it's time to wrap this thing up, Aaron.
No, but it's funny though, because like, especially with Aaron, it just shows you how small the community used to be and how big it is now. But like, technically we come from the same lineage, and I don't know if we cross paths but we've definitely hung with the same people, and then you kind of get connected again later on in life. It's almost the kind of that, the universe having its way of things. But it's not shocking, if you enjoyed cultures like we did that were the same in the past, and we meet again, and right away I think you'll click, right? And I think that's super important. And yeah, I know you guys were talking about the superpowers of schools and training partners and whatnot, but like I said, it's the biggest compliment when you get somebody from those superpowers. They're like, man, this is just so nice to be in this environment, and the qualities, it's top notch, and I get to be in a room full of awesome, humble people. I'm not saying anybody else isn't, but gyms are different in terms of size, in terms of mat space, in terms of class schedules, and we just wanted kind of that boutique BJJ kind of environment, and that's what we've created. And I think it's infectious, and that's what keeps people. And we're the same way. We're open. You want to go train somewhere else, try it, whatever. I'm not holding anybody with a gun to their head. It's you're paying for a service. You should feel like you are where you belong, and I feel that wholeheartedly.
No, you said it perfectly. Like, it's all about what that person needs to help them succeed in what type of environment they want. And I think the more clubs offer the different types of services, or boutique style, or that massive training environment, those are available, right? And it's just about the community really getting together and being available for that to happen, right?
100%.
Not being closed off.
100%. And it's awesome. You go to tournaments, you go wherever, and you run into all these, old faces, and it is like, it's not even a handshake, it's a hug, and it's like respect, and that's changed a lot over the years, and for the better, and I love seeing that. And hopefully as we get even older and into the 50s and 60s, that this younger generation sees what good looks like and starts emulating it.
I wanted to ask you, though, before we wrap up or anything, especially with UFC, because I know you're a UFC guy and you love watching them. What do you think of Fight Island?
I don't know what to think yet.
I think it's Mortal Kombat on steroids. It's going to be amazing.
It's so fundamentally wrong and right in different ways.
That's why. You're like, we shouldn't be doing this.
But I want it.
You want to see it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know, man. I think, you know what? It all stems back to what we talked about earlier. People are losing their minds right now, and it's sadly a way to promote mental health. Like, people need stimulation of some sort, and if they can't do it, themselves, it's vicariously through somebody else or whatever the case is. But man, the things that people are doing and are thinking of that, you'd never conceptualize before, but they're becoming a reality now just because of that void. Like, man, I today watched probably 40 minutes of a soccer game from 2 years ago. Like, I don't even really watch soccer, right? Like, I love soccer. I love like national soccer, but I never watch normal soccer when it's on live, but I watched it just because I'm missing sports, right? So I don't know. I think Fight Island stems from that void.
You're European and you're European and you don't watch soccer?
Well, so I played all my life, right? I play like high level soccer, and I watched like I'm Croatian background, and I love watching like World Cups and Euros and stuff.
You gotta like soccer then.
I do. I love soccer, but I think as I got older, started having kids, I just don't have time for anything anymore, right? So like if I've got an hour, I'm not sitting on the couch watching soccer. I'd rather go hit some balls at the driving range or go roll or something. So I think life just kind of you get dealt some things and you deal with them, and soccer was one of them for me.
Gotcha. So when you see Usman versus Gilbert Burns, who's your pick?
Burns.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Gilbert's on fire, man. That guy, I don't know, man. I can't bet against him.
He's on a streak right now.
He's on a tear.
Crazy streak. And, like, what's even more impressive is he's a physical specimen, obviously. He was supposed to be at the camp last year.
Was he?
Gilbert Burns?
Yeah, and then he had to bail the last minute. But anyways,
no way.
He's such a physical specimen, and his grappling is obviously world level, but he's knocking people right out on their feet, and he's taking shots. Like he's got a chin like it's going like he doesn't have any business in there. So I don't know, man. He's really impressing me.
He's a crazy athlete as well. Like I've seen like his strength and conditioning and everything. It's going to be a really interesting fight coming up.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I even more so love seeing I don't know what to call it, but it's almost the revitalization of BJJ and MMA again. You know what I mean? Where for a while, I think people thought like kind of, I would say probably Damian Maia was the last one for a while who was true hardcore, jiu-jitsu, MMA, and then it's kind of respiked again. And, you've got like Mackenzie Dern, you've got obviously Crone Gracie, you've got Jacare, you've got all, Dern, you got all these guys that are, coming and dominating, right? Like not taking a shot. You got Lovato Jr. just cleaning house, and it's
Ryan Hall as well.
Yeah.
Gary Tonan's coming up on a
Tonan's coming up, well. And these guys are coming out of fights, not absorbing one shot. Like it's impressive, and the whole, we talked about sport versus self-defense, but it's getting even more segregated now, right? It becomes a whole gi versus no gi. It becomes the rule set with reaping and heel hooks and all of that, and then all of these different venues now, like Tony was talking about with the sub X and that rule set, and then there's like EBI now, and then there's combat, and then there's IBJJF, and so it's really branching out, and a lot of these fighters are having to become like masters in every aspect of it, right? And then some don't. You get Gordon Ryan, he's a phenom, and he is the best no-gi grappler in the world, in my opinion. But he can train in gi, he has, but it's that whole dilemma of, are you the GOAT if you're doing both, or are you the GOAT if you're way above everybody in one? Like, I don't know, man. I just think that the sport's evolving so much that people will start moving towards that style of training. And when I say that, I mean they're going to pick one style. They're going to go full into no-gi, heel hooks, leg locks, that whole Danaher system and world, and, Giles Lachlan and Craig Jones and all those guys. And then there's going to be the ones that are, the hardcore IBJJF worlds and PANs. And then you have your hybrids, and it's crazy, man. Some awesome fights coming out today. I watched from the Kumite, there was Jimenez and Roberto Jimenez and Wagner Roca, and you watch that match, and yeah. It was retarded. Like it's amazing, right? And I love, you see a 21-year-old kid like Roberto Jimenez, or Jimenez, however you want to say it. He's fighting one of the Ruotolo brothers, and that kid's not even a black belt theoretically, but like he is. And you just start thinking, like, he's been training for over 10 years now, and he's not even old enough to get a black belt. Like, what the hell does the future have in store? You know what I mean? It's crazy. No,
it's pretty amazing, especially when, and again, I think when Marco was saying it was like with the funding or whatever, these kids are able to just live in the gym, train 6-7 days a week, have all these high level competitors all around them. The sky's the limit for these kids, especially when they're only 16, 18 years old and they're blue, purple. They're just being able to be around that atmosphere every day.
It is. I mean, to me, it's a delicate balance because I have 3 kids, and all 3 of them, my 2 boys and my daughter, they train in the kids class. But do I want my kids to be pro BJJ fighters? I'd like them to get good at it recreationally and compete if they want. But for you to fund your kid to train full time at that age and not build other life skills. Because it's like any other pro athlete, right? The odds of being good enough in the world to support yourself and make a living, and not only make a living while you're doing it, but make a living that you can put away enough to retire in your late 30s, early 40s, that becomes a whole nother ball game, right? So I get there's that living the dream, but there's also, setting yourself up for failure or success at the same time, right? So it's touchy, but it is great to see that it's changed to the point where, if the kid does finish their homework, they go to school and they're getting good grades, and then they do have that option to go train every night because there's class, and they can grow at a rapid rate, being, to your point, surrounded by those kinds of names and watching that level of skill, right? So there's a lot of variables to it, but it's exciting to see for sure.
I think as crazy as it is, I think we're just seeing the beginning of this evolution.
Oh, it's just surfacing. And again, with all of these different rule sets and tournament types, people have the ability now to kind of pick from the menu as to what they want to go compete in and what they want to focus on and specialize in, right? Because there's an ability or an opportunity in so many different facets of the sport right now. And to be quite honest, it's getting to a point where there's a financial ability too, where you can actually get paid for it now. And, it's not the old ways of, go do a seminar for $1,500 and hopefully you've got another one in a month, right? Where, people can start actually making paychecks. It's not just promoters making money off of it. And I think that's been heavily, God bless Conor McGregor for changing that mindset and saying, hey, if I'm going to bring you the money, I need to see a percentage of it. And you're starting to see that in like the Metamorphoses and the EBIs and stuff where it's like, hey, you win this tournament, here's 10 grand, right? Like go to Abu Dhabi where the money is just, it's crazy lucrative, and you can go there and if you meet the right person, you can make 100 grand, right? So it's nice to see that there's an ability for people to get the payoff now.
No, for sure. It's unfortunate that, we see like John Jones right now, Masvidal, all these guys are arguing because they want money, right? And they're like, I'm not going to fight until we actually get paid. So there's all these fighters. But again, they have no leverage because there's no union. Whereas like other sports.
But they do have leverage because their leverage is the brand that they've built, right? Like, I know talking to like guys like Claude Patrick and Mark Bocek and Jeff Jost and all these guys that were in the UFC, and you hear, how they treated fighters back then, and it's terrible, right?
Too.
But
it was terrible.
Hey, you take a guy like Khabib or John Jones, and he says, hey, if I don't get, it's not even X amount of dollars. If I don't need a fixed amount. I want a percentage. So if I don't bring in a good amount, my percentage is small. But if I bring in a good amount, that percentage will equal big, right? And if that name and what they've done and what they've committed to the sport has that big enough of a following to bring in the extra revenue, they should get it. 100% they should get it.
So what's your opinion on like, why do they think like Dana's just like will not give percentages? Like Conor, he did. But everybody else who say I want a percentage of pay-per-views is like nope. And I
think it was also he was getting a percentage for the Floyd Mayweather fight, and I'm pretty sure there's probably some back-end deals with the UFC and Dana where they in promotion where they probably got a nice fat little check cut from that as well.
Yeah, it's a monopoly right now, to be quite honest. And I think what'll happen is if he keeps persistent, like the likes of Bellator will grow and people will start jumping ship, and there'll be no, or it'll become unionized, and there won't be an option. But you know, you can't just be collecting all the money on everyone else's backs, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at most professional sports, there's usually like a collective bargaining agreement or a CBA where you have, like in the NBA, for example, you'll have, okay, a certain percentage of money, revenue coming in goes to the players, and then a certain percentage goes to the staff, the owners, all that. And I think that's probably the direction that the UFC is going to go. It's just a matter of, it's still like, if you actually look at the UFC, like, and the sport itself of MMA, like, it's really started mainstream in the 90s. Like, look how long basketball's been around. Look how long hockey's been around. And they've gone through the same thing with, like, unions and, like, trying to get paid the proper amount. Like, it's coming. It's just a matter of time, and I think getting the ball rolling.
Yeah, and, you know, there's a lot to be learned from boxing as well, right? Like, how can you get two guys paid a quarter of $1 billion in one night, and you know these guys can't make a decent paycheck fighting regularly for you, right? So there's something to be said for it, but it'll change. There'll be an evolution to it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right. No, like I wanted to take this time to really thank you for coming on to the podcast today. We do appreciate it. I know, again, like you said, busy at home, you got the kids at home. I know it's kind of at least an escape for you for like the last hour and a little bit. So I hope you had a fun time. I also want to thank you very much for allowing me into the door, especially at Evo, getting me back into training, and then everything that we've been through for the last 5 years, but also kind of keep going from there. So I'm excited to get back on the mats eventually. So.
Oh,
like I said, man, great to have you. All joking aside, if I could have 100 of you, it'd be a great day.
Ooh, yeah.
Don't. I don't know if you want 100 of Aaron.
I might have to increase my prices, but hey.
There's a lot of extra stripes going on brown belts then.
Yeah. So I wanted to let you wrap us up. Like, if there's anybody you want to thank or sponsors you want to shout out to or anything like that.
No, man, just, you know, thanks for having me. Like, I'm gonna shoot this over to Hobson. I'm gonna try and I will get him to blast this out to get you guys some support and grow into those triple digits, Briars. We're gonna get over 10 viewers for sure.
Nice.
No, but I love what you guys are doing, and two good guys that everybody gets along with, and you know, it's a good vibe, and I love what you guys are doing, and just keep up the good work, and wherever I can help, more than happy. And Briars, anytime you want to come train, arms wide open, man.
Yeah, I'm down. I've been by to visit a few times. I believe I've started making some visits to your gym well before Aaron. So just want to state that for the record.
That is true. That's okay. It's good. No, and I also appreciate, you know, what you guys are doing at Lifetime is great, and a lot of your students' kids are our students at Evo. So
yeah,
I appreciate that, and I love all the synergies, and I love Marco's closing question for you guys on the last podcast.
I told you, Hobson Gracie.
Does Hopson have like a secret brother that we don't know of? That
you never know in
Gracie
Brazil, man, but it's all good. No, guys, keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing a great job, and I'd love to see this thing explode in any way I can help. I will, and if you guys ever want to have anyone from our place or myself back, more than happy to do it. It's always a good time.
Definitely, 100%.
Definitely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
All right, guys.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.